that you like.
Hello, hello. We're going to start again. I'm really happy with the panel that we have ready for you. We've talked a lot about digital, online audiences. Now we want to bring it back to people of real flesh and blood, the actual audiences in the whole. I think it's, it's still, the most important thing for our competition. Live music cannot exist without an interaction with an audience. So this session will be about, how do you build an audience? How do you maintain an audience? How do you engage an audience in what you do? And to start us off, I'm very happy that Tisa is here, and she will give us her experience for the last 30 years in a great presentation, as I was told.
Of course, thank you. Hi. It's a delight and a pleasure to be here, and I came to learn, and I know I have already been learning, and I will continue to do so in the next time that I spend with you. This is very different from everything that's gone on before because it's very longitudinal. It's long-term investment. I think there's a very different mindset from the digital world, which is faster now in big numbers. This is a deep dive into making relationships with young people who we hope will grow up with the festival. So I'm drawing from materials that are now maybe 2 years old. This is when I left the festival, and it may have changed already because this program, like everything else, is reiterative and needs to change and will develop because it's not set in stone and we can't do the same thing forever and ever and ever. So anyway, just for a bit of background, the Hong Kong Arts Festival is 52 years old now, and it's all forms of the performing arts. When the festival was 50, Young Friends also celebrated its 30th anniversary, so that's been a really long time investment. The purpose of Young Friends is to get young people who will grow up with the festival and will appreciate the arts and will enjoy what we do in the way that we hope to bring in, friends to the things that we love. So very quickly, it's to learn, it is about not what necessarily they would want to hear immediately, it's also what we want them to learn. And then we help them to explore and also to create. So that's just a very quick summary of the slide. So, and there are 3 more slides to go. So to learn, which is the next one. Oh, sorry, I have this. How do I do this? Okay, so to learn, we introduce the all manner of performing arts. So you see Chinese opera there, you see music, you see theater, and we go to schools. And a lot of organizations in Hong Kong do this. We're a relatively small city. And there is a very helpful government policy that all students should have some form of contact with the arts. Now, you can do this really badly. You can make them all come and sit in a concert hall and you play something and that's done. Somebody's ticked the box. So at the festival, we decided that this is not what we're going to do and really invest in it. So we go to the schools. We produce actually specific programs to show in the schools. And then this is the learning part. And then we help them to explore. Not master classes, but talks, workshops, classes, experientials, programs, projects. And then we also allow them to create, because doing something gives you the best appreciation of it. I mean, one of the best moments I loved was seeing these kids at a ballet with one kid telling the other, those shoes are really hard to walk in and you have to go on your toes. It's like, yes, we got this guy forever, So when they feel that they own it and know it, and when we go into the schools, after all of this stuff that we do in the schools, some of the kids, not all, because the whole school will come to things, some of the kids will get to come to see the programs with the international artists that we present. And it's not put your hand up and you will go. You have to put your hand up, you have to convince your teachers that you really want to do this. So we make it a desired, thing that you have to work for, as opposed to you're all going and sit there. And I think that's a really important part of the motivation. And they do sort of work that they will present to each other, and it gives them a deeper understanding of what it takes. And COVID actually kicked us into doing more that was online, like many people. And so it worked well, so this remains, and there's now this online education platform that is there. And if you can look at the top right-hand picture, that's one that I'm particularly pleased about. During COVID, we got Maestro Huisa to record Carnival of Animals. And then, better than that, he allowed us to do post-production. So we put animals, we put cartoons in it. And I mean, I don't know about the kids. I think kids loved it. I loved it. We got great viewership. And it opened up a new way of presenting music to a young future audience. And that's it for my quick zip through 30 years of Young Friends.
Thank you so much. Cheryl, maybe you can also share your experience.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl, and I'm currently an independent arts consultant. But previously, I was a general manager of Naxos for the Asia region, and I also oversaw the artistic and audience development for the Hong Kong Sinfonietta. So I just have a very short slide to share with you all, just as an example of what we are doing in Hong Kong currently. So as you can see this here, for example, most of you will probably recognize the names of these artists. Typically, you would see performances in concert halls, at the Hong Kong City Hall, Cultural Center, and so forth. The one way that we are engaging with different types of audiences is that when they do come to perform in Hong Kong through the Hong Kong Sinfonietta, this here, as you can see on the slide, on the two photos on top, this is, as you can see, is not your normal, it's not a typical concert hall. As this is actually the venues, it's a French club, it's a great one, heritage building, and has a cafe, so as you can see, it has a bit of a jazzy cabaret type of feel here. And the French club would then partner with the Hong Kong Sinfonietta, or different types of performing arts organization in Hong Kong, and invite them to come and do different performances to reach out different types of audiences. So this is just an example where the Hong Kong Sinfonietta over the years have created very successful outreach performances in different venues. And here at the French Club, we're calling this Good Music of the French, and as you can see, the poster and also the colors, it's just the whole design is very, very different. It's not the typical type of poster or design you would see in concert halls. This is something that we would want to engage with different types of audiences. The concerts typically would start a little later, so it's almost like you can come for music and drinks. So that sort of feel. And the audiences are usually not necessarily the usual concert goers. A lot of them are into cultural events. They're from the book clubs at the Fringe. They're from different types of visual art. And this is also a way that we want to bring in the younger audiences, the ones that normally would not go to the concert hall because they're afraid, they're not sure, concerts are too long. So these types of concerts are usually about 45 minutes, an hour long. So this year, this is actually the first series that we've created with the Fringe Club. We're doing 5 different performances as part of the first 2 was a part of the French May Festival in Hong Kong, and the others are part of different festivals that are upcoming. So this is one way to bring in people and also expand sort of the database and combining efforts from the French Club's database and also the Hong Kong Sinfonietta, but really mainly attracting the non-concert goers to concerts where they can have a glass of wine, they can enjoy concerts in a different setting. And sorry, can I have a second? And this here, actually, riding on what Tisa was saying during the COVID period, again, this is also another example of from the Hong Kong Sinfonietta. I'm using them because I used to work there, and also that they have done a fantastic job with their marketing and promotion over the years, and concert attendance to this day is still at the 99.9 percentile. So this here, as you can see, was a program that was done during the COVID periods when all the venues in Hong Kong were closed. All the governmental concert halls were closed. And this was actually another great one heritage building in Hong Kong where we were able to come together, put together storyline, and actually curated a concert film. So it's basically a concert, but it became sort of a documentary film type of setting where we then did the production, and we actually were able to release this at a major cinema in Hong Kong. Again, this was done in a way that we wanted to reach different types of audiences. The sort of the moviegoers, they may not be attuned to like concerts again, and it was actually hugely successful. So during the COVID period, even though we could not open the venues for concerts, but behind the scene, we were still able to put together different productions, performances. They were all chamber music works curated in ways that they took place in different setting of the mansion, of the venue, and it became a story told by the concert master. So it was sort of walked through. So again, it was attracting different types of audiences, such as people that are more in the heritage conservation, the designers, the architects, people that are interested in the arts, but not necessarily classical music. So really taking them, sort of killing two birds with one stone. Taking them through the journey of the architect, but yet in a concert setting. So these are the two examples I wanted to share with everybody in terms of what we have done in Hong Kong in the recent 1 to 2 years or so.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. It's interesting to have these two different approaches. One where you try to bring more people into what you're doing in the regular venues, and one where you really go to an audience. I'm going to circle back to you, Tisa, later, but that I first want to follow up with you, Cheryl. I can see what you're trying to do, but can you explain a little bit about the strategy that went in making this step? Because of course it's maybe logical to say, okay, we want to go to an audience, but where do you start? How do you select your venues? What kind of audiences do you try to reach with this step? And what is the long-term plan with doing these kind of things? Is it to bring them back to what the other things that you do, or is it something that you do next to your regular activities?
Well, I think, excuse me, I think that in Hong Kong, I'm using Hong Kong as an example, which is where I'm from. We are always short of performing venues. So I think a lot of performing groups are now starting to explore and look at the different types of spaces, not just any space, could be a museum, could be galleries, but types of spaces that would obviously also have somewhat a decent acoustic and do different types of concerts. So in Hong Kong, given the past colonial city that it was, we have a number of heritage buildings. So I think that a lot of performing arts groups are now identifying the different types of possibility, different types of venues, and Hong Kong, the nature of Hong Kong, the landscape of Hong Kong itself, given the colonial past, we do have a number of heritage buildings. So this was actually a former mansion of a very wealthy family, and they've, have since moved out, and it's now government property, and the other fringe club as well too. So I think because of such limited space, whether it's doing concerts in the foyer of the concert hall, or I actually have another slide, and this is actually quite an interesting one where, as you can see, the one on the third and fourth photo, this concert was actually done at another heritage building. It used to be the former Kowloon. It's a Magistracy, a building, which is now being used for different types of events. But this, as you can see, this used to be the courtroom. And acoustically, was at the concert acoustically, it was not bad. But going to these performances, you do understand that this is not your perfect concert hall. So it's really more engaging, reaching the audiences. And where did the audience come from? It's a combination of different venues, these types of venues, with doing the promotion to their own database. Of course, the organization, institution, Hong Kong Sinfonietta would also do their own promotion as well too. But interestingly, I think what is done that is actually more that is more important is how you drive the marketing. For example, the email that is being sent out, the e-newsletter email that's being sent out. In the subject it says music and drinks. Or it would have to reflect on where the concert's going to be. It's not the usual concert hall setting. So again, riding on the different. I guess I should say that post-COVID, we all had to work much harder to promote concerts, to promote these events, because people's shopping, the whole market trend has changed. So I think the music organization, the promoters, the organizers, the venues, everyone has to come together and promote it even much, much more. Not to mention, fundraising as well too. So everything, I guess, the work for us is actually so much more.
I'm really happy that it works for you. My experience of doing these kind of concerts in these kind of locations is actually that quite often you find the same audience in these places because they want to experience this location where they've never been. There recently was a concert in a skating hall, and then you hope you attract a different audience, but it was completely the regular classical music audience who never been to a skating hall and thought this is the perfect opportunity to visit such a place. I'm happy to hear that it works in that way. Maybe I can circle to you, Yaron, because you're doing actually something really exciting in the line of this in your next competition.
Yeah, well, we're doing, at Cleveland, we're doing two things which are a little bit different as part of the competition. So it all starts, first of all, for those who don't know me, I come from actually the pianist. I was a winner of the Cleveland competition and then a jury member. So we're always trying to look at things from a 360 kind of dimension. And there's a lot of different aspects, when you go and market something or you want to sort of engage an audience, it's a very, you have to think about it not only from your perspective, oh, we're Cleveland and we have this name or something like that, but actually it's about what is the audience interested in and how can we sort of like create this bridge. And this is honestly a constant challenge that I think that probably all of us are experiencing, in particular as we get to, obviously the final round of a competition is traditionally a little bit more interesting because there's an orchestra and it's sort of like a bigger hall and a more fancy, but then how do you actually attract audiences to come to your quarterfinals or to your semifinals to hear 1 hour performances of piano music? Then most likely kids today usually, as we heard in previous sessions, after half a second they basically decide if they want, so this like half an hour Beethoven sonata versus 1 second attention span. So I think that, this is an ongoing learning for us, and obviously nothing's perfect, but keeping to try to, to do new things is always very, very important, and then just learning from it. So a couple of the things that we're doing this year that are weird, and probably in a couple of months when our competition's over, I can tell you how that went. But the first thing is that as the first thing in our quarterfinal round, we're actually teaming up all the participants to play 2 pianos, and we are asking them to play transcriptions of popular music, of tunes that are sort of like familiar mostly to people in America, but all over the world, that we're actually working with some composer to transcribe especially. And then the audience is voting and they're getting a special prize with a special couples, and this is not really part of the adjudication process. And this way, basically, and we're doing it in a place downtown, very different from where the rest of the competition's happening. So the 2 things that we're actually achieving is the first thing, the audience is going to hear some tunes that they're actually familiar with, unlike when they go and hear whatever Liszt Sonata, and probably 99% of our target audience has never heard this piece before. And the second thing that is doing, it's actually creating a very different environment among the contestants, because in a solo competition, everybody's so focused about their own self, and we would like to create an environment that at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat in this together. So when they team up and they have to work together towards a mutual goal right at the beginning of the competition, we really believe that may have an impact, but we'll see. And then the second thing that we're doing as part of the final round, so obviously the finals is with the Cleveland Orchestra, which is naturally attracting a very nice audience. But what we're actually doing is something called the Salon Round, where we're taking a room with 100 people. Of course, we're not selling tickets for that because most of it is pre-sold to our donors and stuff like that. And basically, they're going to be telling a story of their choice together with performance. So it's not really going to be a performance. It's going to be, some of them will take it maybe more to the direction of a lecture thing. Some of them are actually going to talk about themselves or about some interesting stories that they have in the music that they would like to present. And this is just another way to sort of like engage audience that, and I can say that a lot of our patrons even are people that can appreciate the arts, but not necessarily understanding. So many times over and over again, we hear people saying, oh, yeah, I think it was great, but actually I didn't really understand what I heard. So what I think is a little bit our role is to be able to present that kind of programming that helps people understand the music they're hearing, even as part of a competition setting.
Very exciting, both ideas. And also there you're trying to do both things, you try to attract new audiences, but you also try to create something for your existing audiences, which create a higher engagement level of what's happening in your competition.
Yes, actually, yeah, because Marcus and I had this conversation just over lunch, but I think it's really a matter of you have to know your people. And the great thing about our audiences is that they're very open to change, and lucky for that because we keep changing everything we do, or develop. I don't know if changing is the right word. Actually, like evolving based on, because some of the things we do work great and some don't. And just being able to take that and knowing that at least our core audience would be willing to experience new things, and then we just learn from it and we work with the things that work better.
And what is the response of your performers?
So the feedback has so far been wonderful. So the great thing, and we've done interviews as part of our earlier rounds, and actually it's really great to see how the performers, already as part of the applications, we ask them to write all sort of things about their goals and stuff like that. But it's really amazing to see that the younger generation of contestants are very open to try new things. And they're actually, at least from what they tell us, have been thrilled about it. I don't know if they, behind our back, say other things, but at least towards us, they were very, very positive around that and say, oh, finally, some changes are happening. So again, we will see what works, but we're trying.
Yeah, well, that is of course because we work every time with a new generation. We need to be able to give the opportunity to them to express the way that they want to express themselves.
And I think so continuing to what you just said, I mean, what we're discovering, that people are actually really willing to try new ways, and they are actually very passionate about being able to play in different settings. So as we saw in a couple of presentations, that they're, sometimes we all present concerts which are not really in the traditional spaces, but actually it's sometimes in these non-traditional spaces that a very, very different experience for a performer also happens. And even if I think of myself in my performer shoes, and I think about the couple of most meaningful experiences that I had as a performer, so obviously it's, yeah, when we played Cleveland Orchestra, okay, but actually going to some non-traditional, or like places that you would not imagine, in countries that you would not imagine, playing in front of whether it's 100 people or 10 people sometimes, this kind of creates a moment that is really meaningful to you and you carry with you and really shapes the way that you later on develop. So again, if we're able to at least try and provide these kind of opportunities, so maybe that can lead somewhere.
Yeah. And Marcus, how would you say your audience, how adventurous are they?
I think the audiences in for the Sydney International Piano Competition, they have an appetite for change and evolution. But I think they also have an appetite for an experience. So if we're not creating an experience for them in, say, the concert hall, we need to find ways to actually value add. Now, is that the right way to be actually approaching getting an audience into the hall? Perhaps, perhaps not. However, for us, it's so critical that we actually maintain not just our older subscriber database, which is, has been around for almost 50 years, and they're very supportive, and they come, and they will continue to come for as long as they're able to. But it's the new, younger audiences which we also have to actually develop and to nurture, because they are going to be filling the seats in the years to come. And so for us, we've expanded the funnel at the top of that marketing tree, even what we spoke about or heard talking this morning. Our funnel is as wide as it can possibly be. Because audiences, Australia is a relatively small population base. There's 25 million people there, of which 5 million are in Sydney, 5 million are in Melbourne. So there's not really a big market to be, playing with. So we've got to widen our market, our funnel at that top level as wide as we can. And we also then start to look at providing experiences for that funnel. So that at some point, we'll connect with a person, whether that be for the Sydney International Piano Competition, or whether that be through one of our other projects that we do throughout the year, our regional festival based in regional Australia, our residential piano school that we now run, or a new project which is called Piano Plus Place, where we're working with rock and pop pianists, taking them into historic venues, not too dissimilar to what you were talking about before, and asking them to actually create a narrative of the place that they're in, but still focus with the piano at the core. So the audience that we're attracting is still interested in the piano, for our case being the piano competition, but we're actually gaining them from a different genre of performance. So, and that's then in the hope that, this is the first time we've done it this year, so we'll examine our data and our materials which we've captured this year for next year. But at some point, we hope that there is that crossover, that there is an interest in terms of what we are doing in terms of classical, and also equally so that our classical audience are also interested in what we're doing and creating an experience. Because you mentioned, I think, Atisa, you said that audiences are coming to these interesting venues, but they are the same people generally. Or was it, you're wrong. And for our regional festival, which we do in a beautiful historic homestead in the middle of nowhere, with beautiful wine and food experiences outdoors, with 4 amazing pianists and a great repertoire over the weekend, they are our existing audiences. So yes, while we're actually needing to create that experience for them, they're actually then more likely to engage with our other projects, including that of the Sydney International Piano Competition, which only rolls around once every 4 years. Whereas these projects roll around every year. So what we've done is created an opportunity to speak to our audience. What we're doing is creating an opportunity to develop that audience and to engage new audiences to come along on that journey with us. So it's the narrative and the storytelling that we're putting behind what we're doing in terms of developing an audience for supporting, ultimately, the Sydney International Piano Competition. Whether that audience member knows it or not, it could just be a lovely surprise for them, or perhaps not, who knows.
So the audience has been one of the cornerstones of your transition to Piano Plus, or hasn't it? Was that one of the reasons that you wanted to broaden your activities to build also a broader audience, or?
Yes, in part, because we know that without an audience to come to the competition, we're not going to fill the Sydney Opera House 2,500 seats for the finals. We know that we're not going to sell every seat in the preliminary and the semi-final rounds without developing an audience. So, but also at the same time, we don't want to ostracize our current audience. So we're very careful with the offerings of what we do in our annual programming, that we actually give something that can talk to that particular audience member. because we can't afford to lose someone, because 4 years between drinks is a long time, particularly when many of our supporters are, in their 80s and early 90s now. So we really do need to be kind of providing the opportunity for them to continue to engage, because they also come with a sense of wealth and in their older age, and that's important in terms of developing that audience as well. So we're not just looking at the audience that's sitting in a chair in a concert hall, we're looking at our other audiences. So whether they be a donor, whether they be a government agency, whether they be a stakeholder from a corporate sector, we're looking to develop those audiences who are also invested in terms of what we're doing now, as you point out, as being Piano Plus. But changing the narrative, again, about storytelling, people didn't know how to, stakeholders didn't know how to engage with the Sydney International Piano Competition. Because on the surface, in the name, it said, well, you're a piano competition. Meanwhile, we'd been doing national touring, we'd been doing education work, we'd been doing festivals, we'd been doing those things, but they weren't connecting, the audience wasn't connecting with our narrative. So changing the narrative now to be Piano Plus as the presenting organisation has now opened up doors where people are now coming to us to say, well, I kind of understand where I can be part of what you're doing. Which is totally the opposite to where in the past I was going to people saying, we can be part of what you're doing, listen to our voice. And so it's been a nice narrative, and Piano Plus has only been around for 12 months. So it already has kind of started to change how people view us, not just in Sydney where we are, but also on a national level. So in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and across the country as well.
I heard. Oh, yeah, Tisa, please.
May I ask a question? It seems to me that we're talking in two parallel lines.
Yeah.
One is people who already go to concerts, but we'd like them to go more and be more engaged, and also to support the other things that we do. And whereas the other narrative, which is kind of mine, is people who are not yet going to anything at all, including young people, If I can just take 2 minutes to share an example that I love, and I talk about this every chance I get, in a tiny city in South Korea called Chongyong, birthplace of Lee San-yong, etc., etc., etc. When they started a concert hall, and we know who was running it, one of the things that they did was every artist who came to perform had to do a young people's concert. It doesn't matter if you were, Mr. Zuckerman, you still did a young people's concert. And within, I can't remember, a period of time, every kid in that city had been to a concert. So, I mean, there are several things happening. If a couple of kids who had never been to a concert suddenly woke up and said, wow, I like this stuff, that's a real win. And in any case, it's a real win for this new organization to embed itself and to connect with the city in a different way. So I think the audience that don't yet know what we love and do is really worth reaching out to at some point.
But in continuation to that, I think it's also particularly important what is the programming that we offer them. Because if we actually go out to whatever, a bar or a school, and then they come and hear the same program that person presented the night before in the recital hall, we may as well lose the people, because after 5 or 10 minutes, they're going to lose their attention. They're not really going to understand what they're hearing on stage, because maybe it's their first performance. Maybe their interest lies in other types of music. And this is why I think that we have to be very cautious.
I agree.
Reaching out to these new places is, of course, phenomenal. We must do that. But we must also always look at the programming that we're presenting at these places.
Yeah, I agree. And on top of that, we need to work so hard to make sure that everybody who does step in, we grab them by their hearts and make them feel they want to come back. Like, that was fun, or that was good, or that was something, I'd come back. And this is something that, I don't know, when I was working when I was running an orchestra, before every school's concert, I will tell the orchestra, play as though your lives depend on it, this concert, because it does. These kids haven't met you before, and either they will say, been there, done it, really bored, don't ever need to come back, or if we had a hall of 964 seats. If you get 5 of them, you know, we've won 5 hearts. So play this concert like your life depends on it. Anyway.
Sorry, I just want to share really quickly as well. It's similar to the Good Music at Fringe that I had shared earlier. You know, the artists would come to Hong Kong and they would still play their concerto subscription concert at the concert hall. And after that, then they would then, you know, tie on with a shorter recital. So that's sort of the format we would do. And at this mini concert that they do at this cafe, at the Fringe Club, for example, we do expect the artists to, it's more up close and personal. So they are expected to share, have a drink after, and talk to the patrons and get to know, you know, the audiences. So that's something that we all, I mean, I totally concur with the program. It has to be really carefully curated in the sense that it cannot be duplicated.
Yes, I love what you say, Tisa, and then, you know, building an audience is so important. But for me, it feels like, you know, it always needs a long-term strategy of what you want to do with these and what you try to achieve. Because for me, it feels like quite often, you know, we just go out and, you know, it's what we said a couple of times is you know, you need to find your audience, and just you know, organizing concerts somewhere and maybe you get a great response, but what is your plan with that audience? You know, do you want to continue doing these kind of concerts? Because what if you look at the beginning of this millennium, you know, what really crossovers was the new motto. You know, you need to work with ethnic musicians, you need to work with popular musicians. There has been zero conversion to what we actually do, and it actually became like a product in itself. And I noticed that also, you know, with other formats that we think of, you know, which attract a new audience, you know, they become successful in themselves, which is a great thing, but it's not a transition for what we do right now. The question is, do we need to change, or what kind of audiences are we looking for? You're talking about audiences that are getting older, and sometimes it's presented as a danger, but sometimes it's also presented as an opportunity, because, you know, we have an aging population. You know, there is possibly more people alike that we have currently in the whole. And I don't think, you know, it's very important to work with children, but they will not be chicken bowers before they are 40, 50. So it's a long-term investment before you get them back into the whole. So what is, especially for if you look at competition, so what is the conversion rate? You know, what should you, how do you look at this? You know, what are you trying to achieve?
So for us, it's very long term. It's very long term, and then and I talked about one lot of strategies, but there's a whole slew of them, right? So young people get discounts. There's all sorts of options, and if you're a young friend, you need to pay something. So you nurture that sense of commitment, but you get a really good deal out of that small investment that you make. And I mentioned just earlier that that it's not given to you free. You have to want it. So you create the desire that this is something that you want to be involved in, which is harder than just, you know, but I think it's, I've seen concerts, I've seen performances where you just get the kids in and they sit through, and it's complete waste of time, complete waste of resources.
I think it's a brilliant idea that you actually engage them and make them play music themselves. Also, if you look at the demographics of our audience, you know, most of them will have a connection with the instrument. They are amateur pianists, or have had something in their house in the past, you know, so they have an attachment to the instrument. So I think, you know, doing that really, you know, creates a spark.
I also think, from our perspective, and we can't reach every particular audience member. I mean, we do have our funnel as wide as possible, but we also rely on other stakeholder relationships to actually kind of use their audience to grow our audience. And talking particularly around the youth audience, we're working with 2 of our piano brands that we use within the competition who already have an established youth program. So they're already buying a piano, but they also then coming with that also has a whole education element around it. So they're already engaged. So you're finding that value for that young person to already come because they're interested in what they're about to come to in the competition. And so for us, it's about being clever. about what, with the small budgets that we have, to actually maximize for the future of sustainability of the organization. And that's just one example of, you know, two stakeholders who are doing great things in education. We're not going to reinvent the wheel because we can't do that overnight. But what we can do is actually be clever about having those meaningful dialogues with those stakeholders to value add to their programs, which their programs are then value adding back to us.
Yeah, and in continuation to that, I think, and this is, you're touching on a point that we're thinking about constantly for years, and I think that we also have to be a little bit realistic, honestly, because when we, obviously the pianists in our case, or the musicians that come perform, they have an expectation when they come to a competition to be able to present these pieces and you know, the pieces of art that have been written in the 18th and 19th century and sometimes 20th century, 21st, but and naturally we must give them the opportunity to present these pieces, and at the same time, as long as they present these pieces, the audience for theirs is always going to be limited. And this is just something that we have to, and really we're finding, and I think everybody here, and I believe in this hall, is really doing efforts to provide programming that will you know, engage new people. And I do think that there is, and we can see, even as Tisa said, like the 5 children that actually it buys their heart through a program, then we did a fantastic job. But at the same time, we cannot expect that suddenly in a classical music performance of 1 hour of piano, or maybe 10 hours of piano, if it's like contestant one after contestants after another, we cannot expect that the hall will be full with 2,000 enthusiastic 12-year-olds. It's just not going to happen.
This is an very good point, and I wanted to get that too, because if you look at what we do as a competition, you know, it's lengthy. It's a lot of concerts. It's mostly during times of the day that normal people work. So you're already, you know, you have already troubles to get, you know, a big audience, because, you know, most of the times only the people who can follow the complete competition in the hall are either attached to the discipline and are there for professional reasons, or are retired and are able to be there. So that's already a problem that maybe we need to tackle if we want to have other audiences during the whole competition. Do we need to look at other ways to host our events?
I mean, well, I think so, because other, I mean, partly, because, I mean, as, you know, we started with a couple of these different events that we do, because we can't totally, like, reconstruct the whole thing and only do these kind of fun things. Again, there must be the opportunity for the pianists who come, when they come to Cleveland or to Sydney or to Clyburn, or, you know, they do have an expectation to be able to perform the repertoire properly and to be able to be appreciated for it. So I think that there just needs to be a balance when we create our programming. Where are the areas that we can actually bring in something? Is there a round that can be a little bit shorter, or presented in a different place that is going to be sort of like the audience, the attractor for the audience, and then maybe there's a way to grab them through everything that we said, social media and through the digital marketing, around their story, around the personal thing, and create this kind of personal connection to them. So then audience can actually come to listen to them because they're interested in the person, even if they don't understand the music.
Or should the digital presentation that we have attached to our competition be a warming up to being an audience member in the future?
That too, build it up. As we said, we hear like Tisa has a, you know, and we've been talking with Cheryl about 30 years of vision. I mean, this is quite incredible. So we're not always going to see the result right away, but this work is just so important. And in particular, for example, in the US, I don't know how it is in Hong Kong, that there's already almost no music education in school. So we have this kind of commitment to be able to provide programming for them. So there are going to be all audiences in the future.
I think it's time to maybe see if there are questions from the floor. There is one. Does this microphone work? Yes.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. I have no question. I've just maybe I can contribute something. When we started our competition, which is the OLUS competition, Christoph Poppen, who was the director of the RD competition, urged me to say that we will have a poll, or the audience should also give an audience prize to each participant. This will increase their interest, and they will be listening and everything else. We did that, and that was a big attraction to the audience. They were not only sitting there and getting nice music, they knew thereafter they have to vote. Interesting enough, in more than 70% of the cases, the vote of the jury and the vote of the audience was the same. And where it was not, the decision of the jury was always very close. That's one aspect. The second, we have a Clara Schumann Musikschule in Düsseldorf. 7,000 students are there. Each of them are playing an instrument which they study at this music school, aged 10 to 16. All of them get the opportunity to come for free with an adult, maybe father, mother or so, to the concert, because we think we are trying to do something for the future of the music. Young musicians, not just people free, no, they have got to be students of the Clara Schumann Musikschule, and then an adult, 2 tickets are always free. We also go to choirs in our city. We go to gymnasiums where music is a very important aspect. So we are not trying to make money on selling tickets. We are also selling tickets. We also make some money, but that's not our objective. Our objective is do something for the future of the music, and therefore get as many young people in it. And once they're in, to really promote their interest because of the right to vote and to give a prize of their own to one of those 3 competitors on the stage. Thank you, that was it.
I will continue what you've just said. We are doing for several editions already 2 things that I think have an impact. One of them is similar to what you've just said. We give free tickets to students of conservatories, pupils in conservatories, through the teachers, so that the teachers come with them and they can get, the teacher and a few pupils can get free tickets, usually mainly for the first stage. Our preliminary is also, it's called the first stage, and it happens with audience in the hall. And the recitals are 40 minutes long, and surprisingly, those kids sit there and listen. Some of them have been prepared before, but you can never prepare them for a specific composition because you never know who will perform in each date. But they come openly, and most of them survive 1 or even 2 consecutive recitals of 40 minutes. That's one thing. The other thing is a project where we contact every competition. We contact 5 peripheral, remote conservatories around Israel, and the setup is like that. They are invited to watch together with the parents and the teachers the last 2 evenings with the Israel Philharmonic. This is the final of the finals, because our final has 3 different things: chamber music, a concerto with a chamber orchestra, and then a grand concerto with the Israel Philharmonic. So for the last 2 nights, 6 competitors. Of course, we live stream everything, but they organize in the conservatory, in the hall, a screening of that with teachers, parents, and the kids. And at the end, they vote for their audience favorite in each conservatory. And we announce those results in the award ceremony. Sometimes we even show a short video from each conservatory. And immediately following the competition, the specific winner, who was chosen is going to perform their special concert for the kids. It's not a regular concert. He's talking, he's answering questions, he plays short pieces, and I think it has a huge impact. I cannot tell you if it brings more audience to the hall, but still I think it's very successful.
Thank you, Ariel, for sharing. Is there somebody else who has a question or wants to share something? Kristen.
Hi, I'm Kristin Rekstad from the Trondheim International Chamber Music Competition. And as chamber music is obviously for the smaller halls, and of course we have more intimate venues than you will have. We also have a festival very, very closely connected to the chamber music competition, and our jurors are always performing artists playing together, which creates a really special vibe amongst the jury members. And what is very, very important part of our work, we want our audience to bring a friend. And so I was wondering, did you have any experience with how to make your own audiences recruit other new members? Could you say something about that?
There's a brilliant example that I didn't do this, but I admired this so much. I think it was the ACO. If I'm wrong, don't hold me to it. They sent out at one point in some city, they tour around the country, right? That thanks to sponsorship support, we're able to provide all of our subscribers with an extra ticket. So please bring your friend, you know, sign up for the email or whatever, and so you just doubled your base and your database. I thought that was one of the most clever things I've seen.
I mean, and that comes about with that partnership with a stakeholder to be able to do that, right? So you have then that you're afforded that opportunity to develop that audience through that partnership with someone actually still underwriting those costs, because that seat still has a value to you, but also you're getting double the value because you're getting introduced to another new person in that hall.
To be perfectly honest, I don't know whether the sponsorship covered everything, but it's a great way to say we are able to invite you to invite a friend, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's a great subsidy, you know, I would call it a subsidy, you know, by, you know, patron or under, you know, written or whatever. You know, for what we've done was that, you know, they come to the normal concert, in a subscription concert, and if they, you know, since we tag on another recital, a short recital, and for that, you know, you could be half off. It could be, you know, typically what we've done with the Fringe is that they'd come and, you know, to get a free drink. But, you know, if they buy a subscription concert, then they also get to bring a friend to these short recital for free.
And I don't know how you work with host families. I think host families are your best ambassadors, because, you know, they will be taunting their horn. You know, I have the most fantastic person at my home. You all need to come and watch it. Can I, before I give the microphone to Jacques, one thing, what is a great development in the Netherlands right now is that there is this new program where they focus on less fortunate people in society. And they now give the opportunity, for instance, to your audience to say you can buy a ticket for somebody else who is not able to come to the concert themselves. So that when they buy their ticket, they can add another ticket, which you as an organization then can give to somebody who needs it. So I think that's a great initiative.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of great initiatives which we are all doing as in our own organizations, and I don't think it's bad to actually borrow an idea from someone else, because we're all in the same boat here trying to develop an audience. And if it's working for someone else, use it, because I certainly will.
Yeah, Ron, you were talking about programming and the artist, and I think one of the key part is the artist, because you can play Prokofiev 8 in the setting, and if the artist can explain before and engage people before, it will be fine. And if you have someone playing Gershwin songs and he's boring and he's not engaging, it will be boring. The artist is so important. Two remarks regarding free tickets. For young kids, yes. After that, I'm not a big fan. People giving like, let me give you money and you can invite people for free. That's a lot of work to organize, to do, to call the schools, to organize. They don't show up. It's a mess. Then I'm not a big fan of this. I'm not a big fan also of giving tickets away, because I'm not a big fan of saying to them that the value on the stage is not that much. Then I like to tell them that anything is a little bit. Think of going to the movie theater and the popcorn is $8 and you give your ticket to $5, it's fine, you know? Then the $0 giving away tickets, not a big fan for that purpose.
Yeah, and Jacques, just in continuation, I think it's something maybe a little bit our American way of thinking a little bit, but we always, we obviously, because a lot of the money that, we have to raise a lot of money in America. So everything we do is obviously with that, and it's a lot about individual giving. So a lot of the free, as if free stuff that we give, this, for example, 1+1, and we have these project that we're doing, it's specifically for people to bring maybe a specific person who can actually become a contributor, which is at the end of the day can be very, even more impactful than just having another audience member.
Yeah, yeah, and I would just like to add also that I totally agree with you. Like freebies, people don't show up. It's not, you're not putting the value to it. So one of the ways in which at the festival we're able to give half-price tickets to students is that we ask for donations for the student ticket fund, and that's very generously given. And we will say we only have this number of tickets because that's a donation. That's what it covers. If that's used up, sorry, maybe next year there'll be more donations. So, it's always I totally agree with you. We never underestimate the value of what it is, what that experience is.
Final remark from
very
Ping.
little time, but I want to add a remark. Many members of us did quite creative job for expanding the audiences over the past few years. I remember one very important project that Busoni did. Peter Ho is not here, Cici is not here. With Amadeus TV last time, we saw the competition finals in the movie theater. It will attract more people who usually go to cinema and want to see the movie and try to see, what finale is look like. For a competition. I think it's quite interesting to have these cross-disciplinary things, like cross-media things. Like usually we will go to see the movie, see the theater, and we'll go to classical concert. As a faculty member in a university, I work with other schools like philosophy, literature, and program music that related to other disciplines and draw the attention of some people who have different backgrounds. So it may be something for the presenter to think about, to have other subjects, other major, other profession to come over and see how music can communicate and dialogue with other disciplines. Yeah.
Thank you. And thanks to my panel. Thank you so much for your wisdom and comments. Thank you. Then we move on to the next panel, for which I would like to invite Jaron, who's already here. And thank you. Fiona and Pavi. Yes. So, I think you need to prepare your presentation, right? Yeah. Yeah. We're moving on to a very serious topic, of course, and that's sustainability. Maybe it's interesting to have it in this marketing context, but I think it's very, very important and to talk about it in general. There will be many links, I think, of what we're going to discuss with how we go about our marketing and the way we work and the way we operate. But Fiona has kindly give the opportunity to talk a bit more about the way she goes about with sustainability.
Yeah, hi everybody. You know, I like to bring challenging conversations to the World Federation, and this is one. There couldn't really be a time, a more urgent time for every one of us to take responsibility for the effect we have on the planet. And we need to show the next generation that we're committed to a sustainable future for them. Classical music is responsible for significant greenhouse gas emissions, and at the Leeds, we've been working on ways to minimize our impact on these and play our part in fighting the climate crisis. So today, I wanted to share some of what we've learned. Like many of you, for decades, we've been holding live rounds in our home city, bringing around 60 competitors to Leeds every 3 years. In 2018, we changed our model and we took our jury out around the world to 3 centres. We held our first round in Berlin, Singapore, and New York. And this was the first time that we'd monitored our carbon footprint for travel. When COVID forced us all to stay home in 2021, we were excited to hear of Cleveland's amazing virtual competition, and we immediately adopted, we stole their idea, unashamedly, and we set up recording venues in 16 different countries so that nobody needed to take a flight. And the jury deliberated remotely with the studio quality, film, and sound footage. Now, I know some of you will disagree with me about digital rounds, and we can take that discussion to the bar later. But the result was a sharp reduction in our carbon footprint. The difference in emissions between competitions would take 600 trees 10 years to absorb. So, inspired by this, we wanted to go further, to become carbon neutral by the end of our next competition, which takes place later this year. In order to do this, we've been working with a wide range of experts, including our principal partner, the University of Leeds, who've provided us with some world-leading academic research advice, and they've helped us to build our plan. The main components of our plan started with over a year of research to understand the environmental impact of our organisation and create benchmark data to compare with. This data showed us the areas we could have the most impact, and these were things like travel, energy use of our venues, hotel stays, catering, digital, especially streaming, and merchandising. And then we made a plan with our suppliers and partners in each area to reduce this environmental impact and balance our carbon footprint. An overall aim is to develop a more environmentally conscious organizational culture, and this started with the entire team taking carbon literacy training. And if anything sets you on track for making a difference in this area, it's just learning the facts about how much needs to be done. And finally, we want to become a role model for positive environmental change, and sharing our mistakes, challenges, and successes is very much part of this, and why I'm really delighted to talk to you today. So we were really excited about our plan. We'd done the work, but when we first presented it to our stakeholders, far from being congratulated, we were actually told, this is greenwashing. It's going to be a hollow achievement. You still fly people around the world. And offsetting for many is a really unacceptable part of any solution. You shouldn't be creating the emissions in the first place. Tensions can run very high in this subject. Nuance can be lost, and all your good intentions can go far out of the window. Corporate greenwashing abounds, so it's a very tricky area. So bringing it back to marketing and communications, how we have had to start learning to talk about our climate ambitions is actually really important. So we've approached our key communications in the following way. We started by setting clear, achievable, and meaningful goals. We've taken a set of things we can measure: accommodation, travel, catering, venues, merchandise, and film production. We've created a system that we know we can monitor, and we've calculated the cost. And that's given us confidence that we can deliver on this. From a comms point of view, vague promises or missed targets can be really damaging. For instance, we'd actually started wanting to be plastic-free, but once we spoke to our suppliers, we realized that they weren't ready to meet us with that yet. We discovered that because we've been engaging with stakeholders since the start. This has been really rewarding, and it's opened up a rich seam of collaboration, creative programming, fundraising, and many other areas where we can develop partnerships and find shared solutions and new ways to communicate our work. And, oh, sorry. Hang on a second, sorry. I've just gone into a wrong page. We're really proud to talk about our goals with funders, and about half of our funding applications asked about them. In fact, this week I got sent a contract from the BBC, and it's in the contract here that we've got to communicate about our own environmental ambitions. And our agent is currently doing a survey. I don't know if anybody else has received it from Askenis Holt, but they're asking for us to collaborate to find ways where we can share good practice, and there's some really good people out there in the industry trying to address this. Everybody involved in our competition this year, from ticket buyers to pianists and from film crew to piano tuners, all know about our ambition, and they know the individual actions that they're trying to help us achieve our collective goal. The tone of messaging in this is really important, because with something as terrifying as climate change, it's easy to feel overwhelmed into inaction. Both as organizations and individuals, we're trying to move the conversation in the comms terms away from the magnitude of the problem to tangible examples where we can make a difference, making it easier for people to see how they can contribute to it. And this is fueling creativity in our program. For instance, up on the screen, these biodiverse piano planters are being funded by the Royal Botanic Gardens, and the plants are being grown by gardeners around Leeds. Another one of our programs, One Small Step, takes music education and climate themes into primary schools, and our trail of street pianos will be adorned with sculptures made from recycled pianos this summer, engaging up to 500,000 people. So storytelling through projects like this are a powerful way to show how individuals or communities are benefiting from our environmental initiatives. We're learning so much as we go. It's such a big learning journey and such a steep learning curve. Sharing this through digestible, relatable facts, it helps people to see how their choices can help. For instance, we've developed a green rider showing artists the environmental impact of their choices for travel, food, and accommodation. And we're using the competition to inform our audiences about the impact of things like their trip to the concert hall or their digital streaming habits. This is a journey, and any major organizational change only happens when everybody has buy-in and plans are embedded in your core strategy. Our whole team have taken their training, and we researched and devised our plan together. And building that culture does take time, but then it becomes part of everybody's responsibility and part of their shared success. At the end of our competition, we plan to offset the carbon balance of the competition by rewilding an area of Yorkshire near our competition, which we'll do with members of our audience. We'll be getting our spades out, I guess. So, yeah, thank you. Climate change is a vast problem, but there's so many little things that we can do, and I know we're going to get into some of that in the conversation. It just takes one small step, and it starts with conversations like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Very comprehensive. You said in your presentation that this is also something that you feel like you need to tell the world that you are doing this. Is the world also telling you that you need to do this?
Yeah, like I said, it's in some of our contracts. About half of the funding applications that we wrote this year asked us, do you have an environmental sustainability plan? Our public funding, for sure, is monitoring us. We have targets to meet. So it's something that we need to be doing anyway. I mean, from a moral standpoint, sorry, I should have said that in the beginning, from a moral standpoint, we should be doing this anyway, but it's increasingly in the literature, it's in the agreements, it's in the relationships that we have. So yes, that's part of it, yeah.
Pavi, do you have the same thing in Finland, or?
Yes, first of all, I want to congratulate you. You've done a perfect, really great job. And actually, this is something we have to do also. When I'm saying we have to do, I mean, of course, from our personal moral point of view, but also this is something everybody is seeing taking as granted, also in Finland. So Sibelius Violin Competition, we have a cooperation with the Helsinki University of Arts, and in their strategy, one of the 6 points is that art is a part of the solution fixing this sustainability ecological crisis. So it's taken very seriously, but well.
But do they see art as one of the problems or one of the fixers?
Fixers.
Okay.
Fixers. We're part of the solution, and what we are doing now is exactly this, that we're looking for a partner to do the math of this carbon footprint, and what we're doing is now really monitoring every step of the competition. What can we do with the travel and also accommodation and serving the food, and also the list which you already gave.
Yeah.
This.
Jeroen, dare I ask you as well, or?
Yeah, I love being the American representative here.
You're in a good company.
Yeah, actually, the Clyburn friends told me. Oh, yeah. Very happy to have me here. So I think, well, first of all, I mean, it's very nice to hear. I mean, such a beautiful presentation that the very, very small impact that Cleveland could have, and we are as well. Actually, for the first time, have done auditions in Europe to try and minimize at least the contestants that are there. But I think that generally, I mean, there are two problems here. I mean, first, I find it of incredible importance, personally. There is something here, first of all, that is a little bit cultural, because I think that with the United States, and I'm not originally from there, but right now there is a lot of focus on certain areas, certain social areas, a lot of about diversity and inclusion, and other topics that are particularly important. And America is really probably the #1 country in it. And then there are other topics which are a little bit, America is honestly a little bit left behind compared to the UK, to Scandinavia, to the Netherlands, and other countries. And I think that environment is really one of them that is unfortunately not yet in the public discussion as much. Now, actually, United Airlines have, there's been ads that they have launched a campaign of going all green by 2050. So I'm hoping that this may be a start of some kind of thing. But we also have to have in mind that, first of all, the automobile and the plane, I mean, it's all, of course, a financial thing, which is part of the reason that, for example, even a simple thing like trains is almost non-existent in the US when it, unless, except for some parts of the East Coast and for transferring goods and stuff like that. But people basically don't take planes, and everything is about the big cars and everything. And that also connects to a problem that is, I think, also because of the size of the country. That is a little bit different in Europe. And I know that China has the same thing. I mean, this country is so big. So even if you want to go from Cleveland to, we want to go to San Diego or to Los Angeles or to Florida, I mean, that requires many, many hours of flying. And a lot of people are studying in that place. So there is actually also a technical problem there, which is not to say that this is not something we should be tackling. But unfortunately, we can only learn from what you're doing. And there's plenty of us to think about.
I was just going to say it's a really overwhelming thing, and it can feel like something like international travel is like a massive barrier to getting started. But you know, we in 2018, I think we lost the the printer stopped working, and we haven't really printed anything since 2018. No, there is a printer in a corner, nobody knows how to use it. And little things like that, you know, they do mount up. Or you know, offsetting your flights here or your train travel here, knowing that that's the thing. And most apps have an option to do that, and just having a conversation with your team and saying, okay, we're going to offset every international flight that we do. There's offsetting, and there's good offsetting, and there's the EasyJet offsetting. EasyJet is not so great, but there are some fantastic programs. You can find them in airports. I think I saw one in Milan actually. And, you know, just having just those little steps towards thinking about it in the everyday, because, you know, somebody said to me here a couple of years ago, because we were talking about this over a coffee, and they said, well, what on earth can we do? We're flying, that's it, we're international, that's tough. And actually, there's so much you can do. Just changing the menus you offer your competitors to vegetarian as default. Now, I know I'll probably get all sorts of things hurled at me from the audience, but that's what we're doing in the competition, because the carbon tariff of a meat or fish meal is so much higher than a vegetarian meal, and we give them options. We're not forcing it on anybody, but as it sets the tone, it sets a message to the competitors. And when we explained to them why we did the digital first round, they got it, and they were like really excited, like, oh wait, we can contribute to this, and it's something that will affect their careers. That the fact of international travel for artists, we're not so far off. People being told, oh, you can't come to my festival because I've got an environmental target, and you just ask for a business class flight from New York to London. You know, there's some real things that we will have to grapple with, but it's just finding those little baby steps in the beginning is really helpful.
Yeah. Well, I remember that this conversation in the Netherlands started, I think, about 8 years ago, and you know, Utrecht, for instance, was really strong in their opinion about, you know, everybody who is getting a subsidy, you know, needs to change within the next 5 years. And there was a lot of pushback at first, because also, you know, everybody was like, what can we do? And what we had learned over the last 5 years is that there are such a lot of small things that you can think about. And that's also why I put it in the marketing forum as well, because I think that's one of the easiest way to start, you know, reducing and thinking about, you know, do I really need to print this, or do I really? What is the use of all the materials that we produce? So I'm curious to hear. Have you reduced also your printed materials, or?
Yeah. For us, we really print very, very minimal stuff. Thanks to David's fantastic work and Alfie, who's taken it on since then, we do most of our communications through digital media, frankly. It's the quality of our mailing list is really important. The engagement on social media, that gives you the kind of, and a good box office, you know, who's got your core audience there and can give you all the metrics on that. There's not much to be gained really from lots and lots of print, so we've set massively back from that. I don't think print is not a big part of our world at all. It's far more about the quality of engagement and communications, the messaging that we share with people. So.
And for you, Pavi?
Yes, we have a quite similar mindset with this, and we are now considering for the next May that our booklet, the competition program book, that we would print a very small amount of it. So it would be a collector's piece almost, because back in the days we used to print very, very much, and then afterwards we all know that it went to recycling and paper sortiment. So this is something. I think it's important that, and even we have been considering not to give anything as these gift bags or merchandise, but then it's also very important to communicate about this, just not being boring and cheap, but that there's an idea behind it.
And do you notice that your audience is reacting well to these decisions, or?
I think it's going to be taking for granted that it's this modern way of thinking.
Well, it's also the changing of the times. I remember when I started off in competitions 20 years ago, we would send out, posters and everything, just for the application. And I sometimes even still got some from colleagues, recently. So that's changed. I think not so many of us are sending out printed materials around the globe anymore to promote our events. But also, in the competition, as you say, with the program book, it's so easy when you look at what you pay for the printing. It's like, oh, I can add 1,000 for just a couple of bucks. Well, why don't you throw them in and I don't mind. So it's being more conscious about what do I really think that will be the usage of what you're producing.
And if I may add, I think audience people, especially younger generation, they are really conscious and interested in this kind of thinking, and also to see it in practice.
And in Finland, do you still use printed program leaflets during a concert, or is that or program notes?
In every concert I've been lately, I have had paper program, I have to admit. For instance, our national Finnish Radio Symphony Orchestra or Helsinki Philharmonic, they still have the booklets. Because one thing is also that nowadays when we're talking about this digital overload and people always looking at their phones, so would it be nice to have let's say many hundred of audience and just scrolling their iPads and phones? So I think here is one question.
Well, there have of course been a couple of initiatives. The Wolfgang app, for instance, was used that way. As a program which would go off throughout the concert. With real-time notes, and most of the audiences just hated it. And so that it is finding a balance. But how do you have you experienced in the UK? Is that changing or?
I mean, well, from the program point of view, we have, I don't know what we're doing this year. I think it will be exactly what you said, a very limited edition souvenir collector's item. But as you know, we need to tell everybody what's going on in the rounds, and sometimes that can happen. The turnover's quite high. You don't have time to print a fancy brochure anyway. But we did used to use a photocopier and churn out lots of lists for the day. But because we have monitors in the hall for all those special shots that the film guys do, we just put a slide up there saying what's about to be played, and then they've got all the detail in the concert program. So we give them the information, the basic information. It's unobtrusive, and it means that they're not flicking through a concert program making rustling noises for the microphones and all of that. But yeah, I think there are different ways to do it. But we love putting it up on a screen so that people are greeted with the information of who's playing what in the day. They can gather that information as they walk in the building. So that there are some solutions for simple things like that.
I'd like to ask you that the scoping. How did you frame? Because, for instance, just a detailed information that Helsinki Music Center has the biggest solar panel on their roof, biggest in Helsinki center, and they actually get 5% of their electricity from the solar panels. But because this is also, if you do the math, do you do it only the venues, only the competition organization, or? So
yeah, it's a really, really good question, and I have to say that's why we know that what we're doing is manageable for the competition operations. We've put a ring around a set of things that we're measuring because we know that we can measure them. We've gone out to the venues and we've spoken to, one's in a university, one's a council building, so both have targets, emissions targets, a reduction, and so they have to monitor, so they can give us an electricity reading at the end of the day, so we know exactly what we've used. And we were fortunate in those buildings, they are exclusive to us, so we know they're not being used for any other purpose, so it makes it all nice and simple, so we're quite lucky. But that, knowing whether we can monitor something is really key. We had to create a system for the competitors, for instance, reporting how they've made their journeys. So for the first round, everybody's told us where they came from and how they got there, what mode of transport they used, and we've got a fancy spreadsheet that somebody has made for us, and that's how we calculate the carbon cost of that. Same with the jury. But there are some things that we can't yet monitor. So when we did our research, we wanted to focus in on the things that had the most impact. So print was already not a big thing for us, and as I said, for years it's not been a big thing. It's not a big part of our budget whatsoever. So we didn't want to focus on print. We wanted to focus on travel because that was the really, really big thing. That was like 80% of our entire carbon deficit. So by making any progress in that, you can really make some quick gains.
And talking about travel, do you also calculate in the travel of your audiences, and do you try to engage them to come to the venue in a carbon neutral way?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking perplexed in my thing. There's a slide that I dropped off somehow, but I wanted to talk a bit about the audience. I mean, in communications terms, it's really important that they know what we're doing and what our aims are as well, and that starts with things like offering them solutions for their travel to the concert hall, the impact of their digital streaming habits. So, what happens when you're just constantly streaming rather than downloading something and watching it, or saving your files in the cloud, or sending an email with the attachment still attached to it unnecessarily, and all of these things, they can all make a massive difference. So we're sort of imparting some of our learning through the competition. So we'll be having bits of social media going through, but also in the concert programs, there'll be articles about this journey and what we've learned from it. So it's it's a bit of an evangelistic thing, but they're so thrilled to be learning this with us. So some of the other engagement stuff is more direct, like the piano planters. We've got gardeners all over Leeds who are currently sowing seedlings and growing plants to plant in these things. No pianos were harmed in the making of the sculptures. They're all disused. They were going to the tip anyway, although some of them will be playable, which should be fun. But it's a totally different way of us communicating to our public. We're not quite what you think we are. We're not just a piano competition. We do care that we fly people around. We're trying to do something about it. We can't solve that entirely, but we're going to be straight up with you about that. But look at all these other things that we can do. And, like I said before, the nuance of it is really, really difficult to get across, but the inaction of addressing it is, for us in our country particularly, I think it's just there's too much at stake. Cancel culture is absolutely brutal. We might get annihilated for this when we come out and we say that we've managed to offset, because, like I say, it's a dirty word for a lot of environmentalists, quite rightly. But it's a challenge that we feel ready and prepared to step into.
If I may add about the instruments, before we started to learning and studying these things, I didn't think, but this is true, that, for instance, as a violin competition, we have very well recycled instruments with a very low footprint, because they're hundreds of years old.
Well, and I think, one of the arguments that you can use for your audience also is that, in the end, it's less carbon neutral when you bring a few people to you who are performing than bringing an audience to them wherever they are. So sometimes this is also an argument that you can use, that this is a better solution than, and also putting on concerts in different parts of the country so that it's more accessible. These are things that bringing the musicians to the audience where they are is in the end is more carbon neutral than bringing the audience somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, in 2021, we collaborated on that digital round because we actually shared some of the venues. So both of our sets of competitors were coming to the same place. And that was one example of sharing resources and reducing, and sorry, Shira as well, Montreal. We worked with Montreal as well, and that was just amazing, because the three of us were able to pool resources and save money and get our competitions done in a very difficult year. And with the Askenis Holt, our agent, they're looking for ways to collaborate with promoters to try and stop somebody's going to fly from Japan to Manchester to do a single concert and then go back again, to try and work out ways that we can collaborate more. And I do think there's something collaboratively that we could look at as a sector.
So are you considering doing this more often together?
We should. We actually have.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, after 2021, well, I mean, actually, around the first round this year, we had some communication with Adam, but this is certainly something we should be thinking about much more, because there are certainly some resources to be shared to be able to not only save costs, but more importantly, really contribute to this.
Well, I think this is also maybe a broader question to the World Federation in general. Is this something that we as a federation should maybe look into, and bring people together, or should we coordinate this more, that we create these kind of sessions where you can, it even has been said, maybe we can create one video where multiple competitions can look at the same results, or, that there are multiple ways of going about, but the question is this something that us as members want, or is it something that will be a benefit?
Yeah, I mean, I had a quick look on Google, and between 75 and 80% of the world population is concerned about the climate crisis. We mustn't think that this is just, just depends on which country you come from. The population of the world knows what's happening, and increasingly, climate events are affecting all of our lives. I mean, we've had some extraordinarily, well, I've heard somebody was telling me about flooding in Germany. Have you seen the water levels of the river outside, and in other parts of Spain and Europe? It's really quite scary. It's there, it's affecting our audience and stakeholders' lives. And I think the thing is that if we don't take some kind of action, and I do like to be a bit hysterical about these themes, because I do get very worked up about them, but if we don't do anything, then the real danger is that the public at large think that we're indifferent or irrelevant, and we haven't cottoned on to the fact that the world is burning and it's going to be hotter than ever in America this summer and all the rest of it. So sorry to be a bit dramatic, but it's a really useful conversation to be able to have with you all.
If I can divert a bit from what we were talking about, it's attached somehow, but I think it's also a very interesting topic, looking at the marketing conference. How relevant are printed magazines anymore? And how are we still using them the way that we used to do? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think for specialist press, I think there is a sector of that audience that just love to have a glossy piano magazine, and they're usually really interesting articles. And yeah, but personally, I get all of my news online and through their online versions. It's not relevant for me in the way that I read my material, I access my material. So I don't know. I think it's probably an expectation of different age groups. Partly.
But are they still part of your strategy?
Well, not specifically print, no, not at all, not at all. We do not take out advertising. There's nobody that we place an advert with. We focus on editorial, PR, copy, about all this stuff that we're doing. We like to talk about it, and that usually gets us into the magazines. And if it doesn't, then we find another way. There are plenty of other solutions to get to your audience, but no, print is absolutely not for us. It's not even in the budget.
No, for us it's exactly the same. So we don't use anywhere like this kind of printed. We do a lot of other printed stuff, which is just because of the expectation for people to actually get. I remember when I moved to the US from China, and then we got a check from a donor, and then I was like, what, are we back to dinosaur age? What is a check? Because everything in China, you just click the button, and so there's a certain expectation for some people who actually like to do that, and that connects, of course, to a much bigger topic, which is yesterday, actually, we spoke about it over a drink, about being on our phones all the time, and actually not being able to, even taking a book today and actually like a printed book and read it. I mean, it becomes, and certainly with the younger generations, I mean, because everything is on the phone. So I think specifically, and you had mentioned that also, that we always have to balance and see where we are able to save. But at the end of the day, there is still some value to printed materials. That is, you're not going to find it, that some people actually appreciate having a piece of a book or something that they can actually hold or put on their wall or put near their shelf, and not something that is yet another thing that they get online or read online.
It's like making the program book exclusive.
Yes, we will count very carefully the amount that hopefully we don't have to throw away. like in previous years. But I think that's about the only thing we will print. Probably posters, because they are also collector's items. Like you said, that people want to have this kind of memory, but this is also a limited amount, I think.
Okay, I think this might be a point where we can have some critical voices from the floor. Is there somebody who wants to ask a question or make a comment, or? Nobody dares. I'm walking upstairs. Oh. There you go.
Thank you very much for the very interesting panel. My name is Antonio. I'm here with Cascais Opera. Just to contextualize, we're just a newly established opera singing competition from Portugal. Just had our first edition this year. So we're not members yet, but it was fantastic to be here. I wanted to ask about scores. I find that scores and printing out scores is usually the biggest source of paper and paper use. And we noticed it especially in our competition as well, because we had around 50 candidates, each of them singing around 4 or 5 arias each. So that meant lots of scores for the pianists, also for jury members then to have access to it. And of course, they are bringing their own copies. Very often, there are indeed copies and not printed scores, because maybe they're doing annotations, etc. So that's my question to you. How do you deal with printed scores?
Actually, sorry, Adam, were you going to say something? Because our jury has a lot of artists on it, lots of them have what they called iPad Maxes, or what's the big screen one, the iPad Pros, and so they've got massive screens, and we offer digital versions of the scores wherever possible. We're also lucky we've inherited Fanny's library, and we've got loads of multiple versions from the past of those scores as well. But sorry, Adam, were you going to say something?
Well, only to say that virtually all our jury members, if they want to refer to scores, they just do it on iPads. They don't even think of bringing a score. And most of the artists too, you know, many of them are now just playing from iPads and not using scores. And I just wanted to add one other thing, that one new prize that we're offering this year is from Henley edition, Henley Urtext prize, and they're offering £3,000 worth of scores, probably best as downloads. So for the new generation, not a pile this high of scores, but just a lot of downloads, and that's a very, very useful tool, and I think a wonderful addition to our prize package. I just wanted to add one thing to what Fiona said, because Fiona mentioned the planters around Leeds, which people are going to plant up during the competition. In our last competition on our piano trail, we attracted nearly 250,000 people just who engaged with that piano trail, who would never ever have engaged with the competition before. Our piano trail will be twice as long this time, and so we're hoping to double that figure. And just the thought that you can engage with up to 500,000 people, sending out a message that we at the Leeds have this very, very conscious strategy of environmental awareness, I think is also sending out a very, very positive message. It's not just about the figures, but it's also about how you educate and how you communicate that.
Yeah, so if I just may add to that, back to the score. So actually Henley is presenting it in our competition too, so it's great to see that, and I hope that more competitions will go in this direction, because this is really somewhere we can save. Just from an artist perspective, again, it's, so on one hand, really a lot of people, the majority of the people use the iPads today. Always the scare is, and I know it happened not only to me, but actually to me when I was in 2015, I was playing a a 4-piano concert in the United Nations in Geneva, and it was all filmed on TV. I was the only one at the time using iPad, and then the iPad stopped working in the middle of the concert. And that was, luckily, I sort of knew it from memory, and then I was trying to, I had this pedal, and it just stopped working. So still, there's always, when you go out to a concert in chamber music and you're relying on technologies, this is one thing that, well, with the page turners, it's another kind of problem that they don't turn on time, so it's always very funny, but so it's never totally guaranteed. So I hope that maybe one day we can come to a solution which is absolutely perfect, if that exists. But certainly, just seeing among musician colleagues, it's 95% of young musicians today that use iPads.
Yes, but this is very interesting because in 22, when we had our last competition, there were about 40 competitors, and we had the opportunity to send just to download the score. I think it was about 90% of them wanted to have the paper score. Yeah, yes, I was so surprised. So let's see how it will be next year. But anyhow, I was really surprised.
And I personally, I think that in 10 years from now, it will be a completely different situation. You know, if you see what the developments are right now with things like Apple Vision, you know, I can only imagine what this will bring to the stage. Because if they are able to, you know, reduce this technology so you don't have a thing on your head which weighs like 50 kilos, it will be the perfect way of, you know, using a score and still being connected with the people around you. And I think this technology is also not only going to be for musicians on stage, but also for audiences. That's going to be fantastic opportunities because, you know, you're still connected with what's happening, but you can add a whole virtual world to what's happening on stage. If you look what is already capable within Apple Vision, you know, you can really, you know, add things in real time to what you're experiencing. So you can, for instance, even for people who don't understand what's happening in an orchestra, I can imagine that you look at the orchestra, and as soon as the clarinet solo starts, that there's a little arrow above, you know, this person is now playing, watch him. Or, you know, it's these kind of things that can really enhance a concert, but the technology needs to develop further, and I think for scores that will be the perfect solution. Anybody else? Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Fiona, I think it's really interesting, all that work that you've actually done and obviously your team has put into actually getting you to this position. I'm just interested if you could maybe share with us the actual cost that it's been for you to actually get to that point, not just from a money perspective, but also from a human resource perspective to get to where we are, but then also what is this going to cost the leads to actually monitor and maintain and to deliver on the objectives which you're setting for yourselves?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's something that we've been working on since 2018. It's complicated, but we're very fortunate that we've got an amazing network of support where we are. There's the Arts Council in the UK has incredible resources. There's a brilliant website called Julie's Bicycle. I know it sounds odd, but it's a brilliant website. It's got so many free resources. It helps you get started, and it has some of those spreadsheets I was talking about, which help. There's a local group which was started by our local opera company, Opera North. They were self-identified as the biggest carbon culprits in the city of Leeds. And so they said, right, we're going to do something about it. We burn our sets because storage is too expensive in opera. You'll know all about that. But and so they decided to lead the charge on Leeds, putting together an arts consortium of people who cared about the climate. So they've been an amazing support, and they provided free training. So their funding kind of trained our staff. The university gave us an intern that was partly funded by the university, so we just paid a bit of an intern, and she completed the whole of the research for us. We'd already started it, but she picked it up and delivered it for us. She's amazing, and she's going on to have a glittering career, but brilliant person to be in touch if you wanted to have an initial conversation about getting started. And it's just been, we're fortunate, we're just in a landscape where it's a current conversation. The council cares, our partners care, our stakeholders care. So we're all on this journey together, and they've supported us. So actually the cost has been really minimal. Although it sounds incredibly time consuming, other people have done the measuring parts, and there's so much brilliant research. All you need is somebody, to help nudge you in the right direction, and more than happy to share any of the work that we've done. We've got an environmental sustainability plan with specific goals. Some of them we will not achieve, some of them we will, but the bigger picture is the direction of travel and sort of buy-in of the organisation. It will be a key part of our next business plan when I write that later on this year. So, we're fortunate. We've got all of that well of support behind us. I realise it's very different elsewhere, but that's what's made it very easy. And as far as the carbon offsetting is concerned, I'll not tell you here, but you'll be absolutely shocked. It's partly that we've reduced it massively, but it's nothing like the cost you imagine, and that's with a responsible offsetting. If we were going to do it the EasyJet way, it would cost even less. It's not a big part of our budget by any stretch of the imagination, but the messaging and the intention and the culture it's building around it is priceless.
I remember, Fiona, that at first you were talking about maybe creating a Leeds forest. Is that still on the table?
Yeah, well, that's in fact that's what we're doing. We're not buying carbon offsets. We're going to be rewilding part of Yorkshire. So we get personal benefit. We can bring our donors, stakeholders, audience, any pianists, anybody who wants to come along with us, and we'll go and do it together. And that's just we wanted to leave some kind of legacy because it's important to have something that we can build on competition after competition, and I think that's a nice project for us as local. It's investing in your local community and putting something back for your carbon sins back into the local community.
Any more questions? If not, I would suggest a coffee break. Oh, is there somebody? You want to? No? Okay, we're done. Okay, see you after the break. Thank you.
Thank you.
Niet verder verklappen, hè?
Ik zeg niks.
Yes. Water. I'm waiting for my final panelists to join us. Well, you diverted the crisis already, so that's good. So crisis, what crisis? You know, 90% of what we do is planning, and I think 10% is improvisation. We're always confronted with things that we didn't expect, things that are out of our hands, things that happen around us, opinions that are raised. I think, you know, we have a lot of things maybe we can share and also think about how we deal with all these kind of things. I think, you know, the best thing is to start with maybe some stories from you. What have you experienced in the past, and what can and may you share with us? Rita, do you want to start?
Well, my name is Britta Reininghaus. I'm from Graz, Austria, and the Schubert and Modern. Hello? Yeah. My name is Britta Reininghaus from Graz, Austria, and the competition I organize is Franz Schubert and Modern Music, a chamber music competition, and in the background is the University of Music and Performing Arts Graz in my case. Invited to this panel, I had some thoughts about what's a crisis, because what you said, problem solving is our key task. This is the thing we have to do every day, this is on a daily basis. And but what can we do that a problem is not turning into a real crisis? And in my opinion, nowadays, because I do my job for a really long time, I started in the 1990s, and in my opinion, or what I can see is that little problems can turn into crisis even more slightly than in the past nowadays, because we talked about social media and the things that can happen, and one little thing in the opinion of one person can reach the whole world, because this person can make themselves clear what they are thinking in the social media platforms, and then you have to react. I think we all know that we can do a lot to provide, to help that the problems are not turning into crisis. And you said we make plans, we make even more than one plan. We have a plan B, a C, and that helps us to stay flexible. This is one very, very key thing we have to do, I think. And but then, there are even more things you can do you have network, you can, last minute cancellations, for example, you can go back to your network and have your contacts. And in the situation, it's always nice to stay cool and yeah, keep keep calm and yeah, stay focused, but even try to manage to see the things from a meta perspective and not to stick into the problem as much as sometimes it's going to happen. Well, and then in solving the issues, I think, and in the morning the panel about the keynote about the AE, let me think about it. I think it's very important to use your emotional intelligence and stay a human making decisions in such situations which can tend to be a crisis. And yeah, also keep calm. And in this, if you are in this competition, don't run, don't scream, and stay cool, and keep a bit of humor. And I would like to ask Yunqing to show a picture. If this is the only thing happens during a competition, then you can be happy. This was as a volunteer asked to take care of the dishes, and this was the result. And if after a competition this is the only thing you have to claim about, then you can be happy. But one thing, perhaps we can talk later about is a really serious thing which is occurring in our social media is the topic ageism, discrimination because of age. And I think we are in one boat here because our competitions, I think nearly everyone has an age limit, and it starts to get a topic in social media. We are confronted and we are blamed that we have age limits in our music competitions. And I would like to have your opinions later on that. Thank you.
Yes. We come back to that later. Jacques, do you want to share a story?
No. There's two types of crises, I think. There's the one that we can solve and nobody knows about, then we don't have to share this. People are saying, best competition ever. We had so many problems. They don't have to see it. We don't have to talk about it. And if you can manage those, this is great. This is crisis management. And as managers, we should plan accordingly. And for me, there's the 4 pillars of our organizations. I called it G4. Like G for governance, F finance, A for artistic, and R for human resource. If there's a crisis, it will fall into one of those. Therefore, prepare accordingly. The best example, the worst example is the chairman of the board, who is close to someone from the staff, is pulling his funding because he doesn't like that we don't do the chamber music. You have all the problems at the same place. Governance is often a problem. If you look at papers and you look on orchestras and you look at different organizations, it's often governance, but the question is, what do you have in your bylaws? If something happens between the chairman and the staff or within the board, do you know, is everybody knows the role? Is it clear? Most of the time, it's not. Then you should have a look at that. And that's one of my first concern. A crisis, if it happens, you should have seen what can happen. You cannot predict the unpredictable, but you can predict for sure governance. Have a look at those. The second one is finance. Huge deficit hello board, huge deficit, you have to contribute financially to finish the year. That's a problem. Huge expenses, huge whatever, and that finance is a problem. The other thing is artistic. Artistic can be the choice of artistic, but can be also jury members saying, oh, I'm out, I don't agree with this. Or a candidate who, after the first round, he got eliminated and he was with host families. And he decided that it was 22, then we were still in COVID time, and we asked all the candidates to stay close in their bubbles of family, and he decided that it was time to party. Then he was going out that night, coming back at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with guests in the house of the host family, drinking his scotch and his wine, being in the pool with strangers. And at one point, he took the plane to New York to visit friends. He's still in the competition. Then naturally, I kick him out. But because in all the paperwork that they sign, even for the jury also, the president, that's me, I have the luxury of doing whatever I want when I want it because they will affect the brand of the Clyburn. Then if a jury is not happy and he signs that he will comply to all the rules and he says, I want 2 winners. I said, nope, no possible of 2 winners. It's 1 winner. But I don't agree. You sign that you will follow the rules. If you don't agree and I don't care, give me 1. He wants to leave or he wants to complain, I can kick him out because it's written. He signed it. All the kids who are coming to the competition are signing agreements. We had another one who had suspicious of sexual stuff in his college, whatever, and we also kick him out before because of the rules and the fact that the moment they apply, the 400 application, when they apply, they sign that nothing can affect the Clyburn brand, and it's at the discretion of the president. Then be prepared. And after that, if something happens, but deal with it, and be calm, be respectful, be clear. Don't talk to the press first, talk to the right audiences.
I think you're raising a lot of interesting things, and I want to follow up before I go to the other panelists. You're talking about clear communications and trying to avoid crisis by having clear communication. What I hear is you make them sign something, but do you also have these? You say nothing can damage the brand. That's interpretable. So do you have a code of conduct which specifies things, or?
We do. We have a code of conduct. We have so many things. They have to sign their life away. And they don't know this because the only thing is they want to win the Clyburn, but they have to sign everything. They don't read the stuff, and suddenly at the end they say, "Oh, okay, you do this." Yes, we do. Oh, I don't own my stuff. No, we don't. We do. Then yes, I make them sign everything, and it's not bad. It's just that it's been reviewed by lawyers, and it's protecting the Clyburn brand. If you want to share, I'm happy to send the stuff we have. It's not a problem.
And do you have different codes of conduct for different people attached to your competition? So do you have something different for a jury than for a participant or volunteers? Or
the jury doesn't meet the participants during the entire competition. This is not only at the end completely. This is not a problem. But the host families now, and we have to make sure that everything is back check and stuff like this. And at the beginning, they were not happy with that. But now it's fine. We have also a junior competition, and that's another ball game because of juniors. And we have also paperwork a lot on everybody around, and everybody around the organization is doing training and all that for child abuse and stuff like this. Then yes, prepare in advance. That's my point. And if it happens, deal with it.
Sorry, one more follow-up question. No, sorry, because I'm curious. Are there requirements for you in the United States to handle these kind of things? And do you, for instance, there is now talk in Europe with the European Union that everybody who you involve in talent programs or working with younger adults, that you need to have official declarations of good behavior. Is this something that is also in the US?
We have some rules, naturally. I'm way, way afraid of lawsuits in the US. Therefore, we're very, very cautious.
Tony, may I give you the microphone?
Thank you. Well, in the long years of professional life, I experienced quite a few crises. And I come up with probably the mother of crisis we all went through recently, the COVID pandemic, which caused for our orchestras, of course, major problems. The one at first was money. How do we get compensated after the national government had declared national emergency and closed down all the concert halls? This problem was solved without our assistance. We didn't have to do anything because they came up with a plan to compensate this loss of income. But our concern was, how do we bring back the musicians on stage? Because this is something they want to do. They want to play. They want to be back. And getting the money is fine. Getting paid for doing nothing, you can do that for a while without a problem, but it gets depressing. So we had to put something in place to get arguments against our authorities. How can we actually play music? How can we open the stage at least? Though without audience in the beginning. So we commissioned an occupational hygienist to measure the emissions, especially of wind instruments, because the idea was, or the fact was, that people would say wind instruments have great aerosol emissions, which we found out is not true. The measurements showed that the longer the tube of an instrument is, the less actually aerosol is coming out. And this was our way to approach a protection concept, which included, on the one hand, the stage, to bring back the musicians on stage, but also to have, after a while, when the restrictions were lowered, an audience back in the hall. And this protection concept was an elaborate work. Actually, was successful. We managed in a decent time to at least have some concerts, concerts that were streamed most of the time. They were not with a live audience. And that's the way we sort of try to approach this mother of crisis.
Thank you. Ariel, you also want to share something?
Yes, I have a different categorization than Jacques. I think most of what you said related to legal procedures and signing people to comply and so on. So this can be one category for me. But I want to categorize the crisis possibilities based on the reason. Why do they happen? So I think one of the reasons can be stupidity of people. I will have an example later.
That's the majority.
Another one has to do with technology. Sometimes you have technical problems that are not always expected. And then, of course, there is force majeure, like what you said, the pandemic. And there are other examples, but I think these are the three main criteria. So I let you pick up which story do you want to have, of which kind.
Pick one.
I pick? Okay, so if you talked about the pandemic, let's talk about that. Our competition was supposed to happen in 2020, in June. And of course, it was the middle of the crisis, and when the crisis started in February, we thought that it will end within 2 months, 3 months, so we did not decide of postponing. Members in the board said, oh, we must postpone, and so on. So I said, there is no reason to postpone, because if it ends, fine, and if it doesn't end, we will not get any advantage by postponing it now. Let's wait and see what happens. And of course, we saw that we cannot have the competition, so we postponed it. So this is a sort of a crisis because the postponement didn't state the date. To get a date for the next competition, I had to start talking to the orchestras, to the venues, to the jury members. But the first thing that I always do in order to fix a date is talk to the orchestras. All of them said, oh, we wanted to postpone to 2023. Oh, we cannot give a date in 23 because we have a tour there and we have the concert series here and we have this and we have that, so everything is full, no free dates. So I told them, okay, but it's reasonable that some things will get canceled. Yes, but we don't know, so we cannot guarantee any date. So at the end, I convinced them to give me a tentative dates, and we agreed that they can cancel 3 months before. Apparently, most of their tours were canceled, so they had plenty of time. But the only way to get date was to let them have a reasonable window of 3 months to cancel without any complaints. And the same happened with the venues. So then I could get the dates for the competition. And then the jury members, some of them couldn't come, some of them were afraid because they said, oh, we don't travel during pandemic and so on. Okay, but we got other jury members and everything was ready for the dates. And when the date approached, we discovered that we cannot have a normal competition. We cannot bring 36 or 40 pianists to Israel, and it was still forbidden to perform in the hall, in the venues. So what do we do? I suggested to the board, and they accepted it, that we do a hybrid competition. We record the first 2 stages in 5 different locations, believing that people can travel to those locations, not 16 or 12 that you mentioned. So we had one in New York, one in London, one in Potsdam, and one in Beijing, and of course one in Tel Aviv. We wanted to maintain the quality. So we brought 2 pianos to each venue. We brought a technical team, the cameras and the recording people, according to predetermined specification of equipment. And they had to, and we recorded all of this. Then we had, each pianist came and had to record the recital for the first day, for the first round, and then the next day, the recital for the second round, if he gets to that round. Okay. But this was the easy part. Now the problems start. First of all, for instance, we thought that people can fly from Korea to China because it's very close and it will work for them. But then China didn't let them in. They couldn't enter. So we had a Korean guy who had to record in Potsdam. In Tel Aviv. And he got to the airport here I have to stop this story and tell another story. How do you get a permit to record, for instance, in Tel Aviv, but the same stories happened in all cities, all of the cities, to get an arrangement that would allow us to bring people to Tel Aviv and record and go back? We had to give a specific structure of how are we doing it. And I had to reach the general manager of the Department of Health, of the Ministry of Health. And he approved it. The idea was to bring them to a student dormitories near Tel Aviv University. They can walk from there to the hall, record, go back and stay there. And after 2 days, they go home. Okay, so everything is fine, great, he approved it. But now I see that they need a special permit in order to arrive to Israel. How do I get that? And I'm discovering it the next morning. So I talked to the guy in the ministry who should handle this with the Ministry of Internal Affairs. And he says, no problem, I will have everything ready. And then that guy from Korea calls me from the airport and he says, listen, they don't let me on the flight because I don't have the permit to enter to Israel. So I'm telling him, but you're not flying directly, you fly to Paris, yes? So tell them that you want to go to Paris, and if you don't get the permit by then, you will stay in Paris. Okay, they let him go to Paris. Now, in Israel, Saturday is like Sunday in Europe. All the ministries are closed. And how do I get the permit on Saturday? So I called this guy. Luckily, he was not a religious guy, so he answered me on Saturday. And I tell him, what do I do? So he said, I cannot do anything now, only Sunday morning when they open the ministry. But I'm telling him, this guy has to go, they close the gate at 8 o'clock in the morning. So he say, okay, the clerks usually come at 7:30, I will try to do my best. And believe me, he got the permit 5 minutes before the closure of the gate. And he got to Tel Aviv. So this is one thing. The other thing is the procedure. How do we had the broadcast of all those sessions. The jury members watched with the public at home. It was streamed in the internet. We showed the faces of the jury members via Zoom so that people could see them listening in live time when we broadcasted it. And we got the 16 coming to the second stage and then the finalists to the last stage. I decided even before that if we cannot do the finals with audience and with the orchestras, we will postpone the finals until we can. Luckily, they just let us start doing concerts in halls, in capsules, meaning that if the hall has 2,500 seats, we can fill up to 1,000 seats with empty seats between people. And that's how we did it. But now we had to bring the jury to Tel Aviv. And the procedure for that is, again, very problematic because they cannot just come. They had to do, to get an injection in their country and prove that they got it. When they arrived in Tel Aviv, we had to drive them to a hotel in a city nearby Tel Aviv where they had a simple fast test just to see that they are clear. And only then we could drive them to the real hotel where they are going to stay. Then they had to go to the hospital to have a serological test. The results of serological tests come the next day, but they had to go already outside. So the manager of the hospital told me, it's okay, you can tell them that it's okay. We will manage with that. This is only half of the things that we had to do with them. They had to do tests before entering the halls. They had to do tests before flying back. And after the results of the serological test, you should call the Ministry of Health, and they should give you a permit to get out of the hotel. But of course, people cannot talk to them because most of them don't speak English. So I had to call, and if I told them that the person is near me, but he doesn't speak English, no, so we cannot help you. So I said, I am the person. He was sitting near me, but I presented myself as him, and I said all the information, and we got the permit. So it was really a cascade of things, all of this in top of the normal operation of a competition, and you don't know what to do first because the day has only 24 hours. And then I connect to what you have said, stay calm. I remember that in the days that I was performing as a pianist, I can really testify that I think my best performances were when I had high fever. amazingly, this was the setup that I felt I played the best. And I think it has something to do with the fact that, okay, that's the situation, you cannot do anything with your fever, so try to do your best, and whatever happens, happens. So it limits the stress. And then you just work and try to solve things and stay calm, because you do your best. And if something is unsolvable, it will not be solved, but usually you can solve problems. And they were coming every 5 minutes. This jury member couldn't go there, this one, this no test, yes, test. Okay, let's do that, let's call that one. Calm, calm, do the things, you don't sleep, but you could solve it. And we had the finals with 6 wonderful finalists and 3 first prize winners who are succeeding today. So that's one long story.
Yes. Well, you know, of course, you're absolutely right. You know, the whole Corona, that really was a test for our flexibility. You know, and after that, you know, every competition feels like it's a walk in the park. It's on one hand, you know, there have been so many things that you were confronted with and that you had to deal with. But on the other hand, I've never felt pressure during COVID because, you know, there was always, when things would fail, there was this safety net of, I can blame it on COVID. And that's something that of course, now that we're back to real world, you know, there was no excuse anymore, you know, now we have to deliver.
It's like I could blame my fever, but
yes,
miraculously there was no need to blame.
Yeah, no, but we talked about, you know, the things that we can do to prevent crises, or the things that we can think of in advance. But what do you do when you get crises? Oh, you want to have something first?
We have to define crisis.
Oh
here.
yes. Well,
because when you think of a crisis, I'm thinking in 20 years from now, people will talk about Pogorelic leaving Montreal competition, no, Marta leaving Montreal competition because she was not in agreement with the jury. This is still a story. Then a crisis that affect us can affect also Fort Worth. If something happened at the Clybourne, artistically, nobody will care that much. If something affects the name of Fort Worth in the world, my head will be chopped because they are very, very concerned about the brand of the city. Then crises have to be defined where you're talking and to whom feel that it can be dangerous. And it's why I was talking about a lot of stuff, because for me, managing problems, that's our job. And it will be forever. You know, we'll always have problems. But a crisis is something that can really, really hurt the organization for a perspective that in 10 years from now, they will remember that this happened. And this is the way that I look at it. And it's why I'm trying to prepare everything in advance.
But Jacques, when a crisis or a problem arises, something that is out of your control, and something that is out in the public opinion, well, no, because, you know, you're still, what you talked about was managing what is happening behind the scenes, you know, and problems that arise, of course, you know, everything that you can manage. But once, you know, there is something that is out in the open, or that a problem is created which you don't see as a problem, but the audience sees as a problem, what do you do then?
Yeah, there's always stuff that will happen. Can be a fire alarm in the final round that is live, and you have to go and stop everything and get everybody out of the hall. It happened, you know. Then stuff like this will happen. We have to manage it. But for me, it's how it affects the organization. It's why I see crisis management. I'm thinking, how can it affect badly the organization, and how by your reaction you can save that. And it's part of that, the process afterwards, how you react, how you inform the key people first, all this. And this, you can hire people, you can talk to people who are expert in that field. But managing an orchestra who canceled 10 days prior to the competition, 2005 Montreal, that you can manage. It's a crisis. It's a management inside crisis. The competition happened, and it was fun. nobody will remember this except me and the people who were there at that time. Yes, but I think this is our job. Once again, for me, crisis has to have an impact, or could be having an impact in an outside world and affect the competition, or if affect the competition, affect the donation in my car, or grants, or thing that can affect the course of the competition afterwards.
When we said we have to define a crisis. A crisis, I came up with this general and really big crisis that everyone was going through, and everyone had a problem with it. But you have maybe the smaller crises. I mean, you mentioned one, you mentioned a few. It just occurred, this little story. I mean, it can be a crisis if your conductor bursts out in rage because of a problem. And just occurred to me this little story some years ago when I was responsible for a festival in Basel on contemporary music, by the way, music of the 21st century. We had 11 months of preparation, and the actual month of music was in November. We gathered the 4 well-known ensembles of contemporary music, the Ensemble Moderne, Klangforum Wien, Intercontemporain, and the London Sinfonietta in residence, each of these ensembles for 1 week. And it was the concert of the London Sinfonietta. Before the first concert, we learned in the morning that the lorry with all the instruments, and it was a program with lots of percussion instruments, broke somewhere in Belgium, far away from Basel. And they did not manage to get another lorry, to get a transport company that could overtake the job. They were searching for a workshop to repair the lorry, which was not possible in the middle of the night. And at the end, we had to decide, in order to have the concert the next evening, to send our own transportation firm to pick up these instruments. And finally, we were informed, okay, they met, and the instruments were loaded to the lorry, and they started approaching Basel, took the road to Basel, but it was impossible to have a rehearsal. And we had to inform the conductor, who was H.K. Gruber. One of his pieces was to be first performed that night with a lot of instruments. And we had to tell him that there will not be time for a rehearsal. And we expected the reaction that he would really probably outburst of rage, but the contrary was the case, actually. He jumped of joy and said, this will be the best concert ever, because we get on stage and without a general rehearsal, we will have fun playing this piece. And I think this could have been a small crisis for someone, for us, and it turned out to be not a crisis, but the contrary.
There, I would like to say, I think the original meaning of crisis is turning point, and if you go back to this, then yeah, I think this then a crisis can have some positive impact after you manage to go through, and yeah, if you see it like this, if you're in the middle of the crisis, then perhaps you see a light at the end of the tunnel. then yeah, I think we should take this into consideration. It's a turning point.
Absolutely. But then getting back to what you talked about before, and also tying in with what Chuck just said, public opinion, and how do you deal with, you know, being called out for reasons that you don't understand, or, you know, how do you manage bad comments? What this morning also was talked about, you know, you said, Chuck, it's so important to manage the communication. Do you have strategies for this? You know, is
I
it
leave
something?
everything to Maggie.
That's a strategy.
It's your problem. No, but there were no handbooks or anything like this that you have something ready to roll, or.
We had in 2022 Marin Alsop for the final round, and it should be here soon. And people on YouTube were really, really bad. And at one point, Marin informed me of this, and Maggie managed it for real. but it's people. How you say that? They behind their keyboards are saying terrible things. Then I think that, and your phone is ringing. And I think that you have to, if people are commenting and you can answer respectfully, we agree to disagree, it's fine. That's the best way to do it. With the others that are using a blank to yes, then we ignore, we erase. And it's why I asked the question this morning to this lady from Barilla, because I'm very curious how the way to proceed. And essentially she said pretty much, you know, the offensive one we get rid of, and we try to at least explain calmly where we are and where we stand regarding this issue or that issue.
Stupidity and bad comments. It's two stories, actually. One of the benefits of the hybrid competition, since the two first stages were pre-recorded, is that I could bring up a series of 5 podcasts, you can call it a podcast, which we called interpretation analysis. I took 5 leading pianists, Israeli pianists, very well-known ones in Israel, and each one of them selected a pre-recorded composition of one of the competitors, and he analyzed it, comparing to other performances from YouTube, saying his opinion about what's good, what's bad, and so on. Okay, so one of those, she said a sentence like this. Nowadays, the standard of pianists in the competitions is so high, technique is no more a question. All of them are perfect. Those who are not perfect wouldn't even dare to apply for the competition. So what we really have to listen to is 1, 2, 3. Then a guy, I don't know his name and from where he is, took this and you see, the Rubinsteins allow only perfect technique pianists to join. So he took it totally out of context. And how did we deal with it? We did not respond. Sometimes it's better not to respond, and then people forget about it. But you know, it was out of context. But I have another story of stupidity, if we have time. And that has to do with pianos. We supply pianos to the hotel where the participants stay, and we put them in their rooms so that they can practice. That's the way that they practice. They get pianos in the rooms. So we go to many hotels a long time before the competition to see the size of the rooms and to decide which hotels are the best for us, and then we discuss with the management and we reach agreement with one of the hotels, and that's what we did in the last competition last year. And then we didn't even know that the management changed. And on the day that the pianos were delivered, the trucks came with the pianos to the gate of the hotel. The manager said, no, I don't agree. Pianos in the room, no. It will scratch my floor and it will disturb other guests. No way. So of course I tried to tell him, but we agreed with the previous manager. Yes, but I'm another manager, I don't have to agree. And I told him, listen, if they scratch your floor, we will compensate you, okay? We will cover it. But he didn't want to listen. what do you do? We have 36 pianists, no pianos in the room. How do we arrange from today to tomorrow? The pianists started arriving. What do you do? It can ruin the whole competition if they don't have where to practice for 36 people. And then even if you find 36 places, you have to drive them there and so on. So again, I said, stay calm. What can we do? What can we do? And then I remember friends whom I worked with when I was a high-tech company CEO. And I knew that they are leaving their current building, 2 floors, and going to a new place. And I called them and say, listen, is the building free? Yes. Can we get the keys and put the pianos there? Yes. When do you need it? Next week, I'll be there. No, I need it today. So, okay, you can send someone to this and this person, and he will give you the keys, and I will come later and try to help you, and so on and so on. So I had a kind of a solution where to put all the pianos. Now I only had to take care of the transportation. But luckily, that guy from the hotel changed his mind in the last moment. He sent me a contract where I had to agree to compensate him for 2 million shekels, which is about $500,000, if there is any harm. So of course, I crossed out most of the paragraphs, and I only left the one that I will compensate for the scratches if they happen. And somehow we agreed. But, you know, this was really scaring.
Wow. You're tested every competition, it seems. Before we go maybe to the floor, I was wondering, Britta, you were telling about this comment where you were called out about age. What did you do?
Well, what was said before, I think too, communication is key and be transparent. And we try to explain our strategic goals and what we are doing and why we are doing this, and very, very clear and without emotions. And again and again, because sometimes the persons stick on this topic and react again and again, and we just repeated a very clear, straightforward explanation why we do what we do. And in the background, the university, and I think we have a lot of arguments why we and the federation as well. We referred to the recommendations of the federations with some age limits, and yeah, I think this was how we did. But I see that it comes again and again, and therefore I would be interested if this is just Europe, just university, because we have a very sensible community about discrimination in our surrounding.
I think actually this is a broader topic, and I would suggest that maybe next year we dive into that. I think that's a very interesting topic.
It's always a good option to throw the federation under the bus, yeah, to save a problem. This is not me, it's the federation.
Yes. No, but what I hear you say, and I think that's an important linking to what we are talking about now, is that you always engage with an audience when they ask a critical question. You will never avoid, and it's also, of course, what is coming up quite often is you know, there were always comments about the results of a competition, and there are always people complaining, and it's always a you know, a question, you know, do you take it seriously or not, you know, and I think it depends, of course, of the tone of voice and of who is raising the question, but yeah, ignoring things for me always feels like, yeah, unless they are not attached to reality, but you know, keeping this line of communication is so important. Maybe there are questions from the floor. No? There should be microphones. Oh, it's there. Yeah.
Andrew Freres, Chopin Society of Hong Kong. Very briefly, it is important to just say one word about the spacing of the competition. It takes place every 3 years, and in the 2 intervening years, we are having something called the Joy of Music Festival that links the two competitions between each other. In other words, we use elements of one competition to stretch into the annual Joy of Music festivals and then the competition. The annual lasts 1 week and the competition lasts 2 weeks. The COVID, strangely, had absolutely no impact to us. And I'm not saying that proudly and cockily, because of clever use of both technology and time. Year 20 was the first year of the beginning of the COVID, and we had some interesting experiences. It was just happening, and the government in Hong Kong was experimenting. So we had a fair number of foreign artists coming to Hong Kong, which we found out at incredibly short notice we couldn't have. So bang goes half the Joy of Music Festival. Immediately we tried and managed to get substitute, well, let's say potentially substitute artists from the Hong Kong Philharmonic. And that was leading up to the week that we will start. On the Saturday of the week, the timpanist of the Hong Kong Philharmonic goes down with COVID, and the whole Philharmonic, about 90 people, were escorted in police vehicles to an isolation community outside Hong Kong. Bang goes our other half. So what we need to do? Well, we've had to find another orchestra that could lend us some artists, and this happened. So on Monday, we are starting at least with a good element of local artists going forward. Now, if there is a typhoon in Hong Kong, and there are frequent typhoons in the period from September to November, and if the typhoon is severe enough, the government closes down Hong Kong completely. Nothing moves. There is no public transport, very little public transport, and all, of course, buildings, offices, and, of course, venues are closed. Wednesday of our Joy of Music Festival, a number 8 typhoon is declared, and we cannot run it on that particular day. So we had to find alternative days in which to run it. So that was an interesting experience on, let's say, fast and furious movement. That was year 20. Year 21, full COVID lockdown. So we cannot run the Joy Music Festival at all in Hong Kong. So half of it is run in Vienna, in the MDW, which very helpfully provided us with venues, and the other half is run in Hong Kong live, but the two things connected by live streaming, which was hugely important for us because the 22, the next year, we have the full competition. And we already had the solution, having practiced already with the MDW joining together half and half. The 22 competition was very straightforward to run, haha, if you know how to do it. And our executive secretary, Annabella, was very incredibly capable of doing it. While she was planning it, I was busy going from pharmacy to pharmacy, trying to find cyanide tablets, but unfortunately, they seem to have run out completely. You know, that was not the only one that was feeling bad. The whole competition is moved to the Esterhazy Palace in Eisenstadt, all of it, completely. Candidates, orchestra, with Marin Alsop actually conducting, and of course the members of the jury, and all of it is shown directly in live and very high quality direct streaming to Hong Kong. So it meant that COVID, thanks God, never had any particular impact to us. However, and this is an interesting however, we had the occasional other hiccups. Member of the jury got by mistake paid twice and then refused to return the money. We had a jury member that almost died of a heart attack, and I had one of the sponsors calling and saying, well, you know, we ask you to cut down costs, but this takes it to a little bit of an extreme. And, but mercifully, we didn't have any other specific issues. So we were lucky in the sense that both technology and the support of the Hong Kong government, I must admit, that had no problem seeing the competition move physically outside of Hong Kong, although of course it was still the Hong Kong international competition, because that allowed them to say, Hong Kong might be under COVID, but life goes on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Gardner, a journalist. Now, with my professional hat on, I'm the person sitting in the hall, so I'm often not seeing a lot of the crises that you're discussing on stage. But I am very interested, therefore, in the ones that hit the news and the extent to which, obviously some you just cannot foresee at all, but I'm wondering the extent to which you are also trying to troubleshoot in advance to think about the sort of crises that can be averted through soft skills. So there are two, for instance, in the top of my head. The first is often with young artists, with competitions or music academies as well, what you will get is somebody feeling disgruntled, maybe for the right reasons, but often for the wrong reasons as well, and leaking to a member of press or a newswire. So if they've leaked anonymously, then no amount of signed contracts is going to do anything about that. So you can't reprimand them, you can't punish them, and they're going to do it. So I'm wondering, is there any sort of messaging that in terms of making friends, establishing the idea of a contract of being part of a competition family? Is there anything you're doing soft skills-wise to avert those sorts of crises that aren't necessarily inevitable if you're handling things personally from the inside? And then the other one that occurs to me is, I don't know whether anybody was at the 2019 Long Thibault piano competition final. And that one, it was an audience problem. They weren't happy with who won. The favorite, I think, was class sixth. And basically what happened was, as the rankings got delivered, the boos in the audience got louder and louder and louder. It was, I've never sat in anything like it before. Now, you can't control an audience, particularly not a Parisian audience. But I wonder whether there is anything that you ever think about within your competitions in terms of speaking to the audiences or messaging to the audiences about how important their role is and about how valuable their support for whatever going on in stages in terms of the young artists who are in a very vulnerable position up there.
I must say that we love this kind of crisis. We encourage our audience to react, even if they boo, it's fine. We can contain it, and I think that one of the most wonderful things that we have in our competition is the audience. They are fighting with us, with the jury, between them, who plays better, why do you think this one, and why do you think that one? They are so much involved that we really adore it. So we don't try to prevent it. We just let it happen. And we can comment and say, okay, it's legitimate that they like this guy or that guy. The jury have other criteria, and it's okay. We can live with both approaches. As for the journalists, I remember from other production that I did once for 8 pianos and 16 hands in the Israel Festival. And I knew that one of the music critics is totally against this. He thought that this music is not as important as the real music because it's just transcriptions in many cases and so on and so forth. And it's just, it's very cheap. Why can't we go only with normal concerts, recitals, orchestral concerts? Why do we need these 8 pianos? So I wrote in the program book of the concert a full article about compositions for many pianos, about concerts, about the history of that, about how much fun it is for the audience and for the players. And he read it, and then he wrote wonderful critics. So sometimes you can prevent things if you know in advance what are the attitudes of some of the journalists. But of course, you cannot know always.
Yeah, for the audience, complicated because I don't think you can prevent the audience. The other thing that I'm thinking about is when we introduce the jury on the stage for the award ceremony, we make sure that we say that the jury listened to more than 4 hours of music. At one point, most of the crowd there listened to the final round. And when you emphasize the 4 hours of music, then you understand that, oh, maybe my winner tonight is not the winner of the jury because he listened to all this stuff. That's the only thing I could think about. For a candidate, I don't see that happening. In the previous competition in Montreal again, we should talk about a conductor who was very friendly with a journalist. And he was going out and talking with people after the concert and blah, blah, blah. I had to go and see him and say, please. I was young, he was old, and he blew me off. But technically, you know, I was trying to manage this. Another one, Leonard Slatkin, that you all know. Leonard is a talker. He loves to talk. And he was in the box listening to people. And at the Clyburn, everybody can see where the jury is. And you have to understand that after a performance, they go like this to see what's happening in the jury box. Leonard could have talked about the baseball game because something happened in his head and he's talking to Marc-André Hamelin and blah, 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 blah. But people are seeing Leonard talking right away and thinking, oh, he must be talking about the last candidate, which is not the case because Leonard talks all the time. Then I went to see Leonard 3 times during the competition and said, Leonard, please refrain for showing anything in the box. After that, while you're on you want to talk about the baseball game, it's fine, but not in the jury box because people are assuming that you're talking about the candidate. And we have to control always the perception of people, which is very difficult.
May I add one more thing to your first question, you know, leaking to the press? I think, you know, there are 2 different scenarios. First, there is smoke coming from an actual fire. Then you have to deal with that internally. And then think about a strategy how to counter that. Most of the times, there is smoke without a fire. And then it's just... And then you can be very open because, you know, you're doing the right thing. And so I always try to communicate openly about things. And I think I'm running 2 minutes over time. So I would say thank you very much. Next day, tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Just a quick housekeeping announcement. We will all meet again in 1 hour upstairs at the Pear lobby. If you can be a few minutes early, would be very